Hi, Steve here with my weekly diet update.
Okay, I weigh 250 this week and my body fat percentage is 24 and fat mass is 58.9.
And that's up a little bit from what it was a couple weeks ago. I was at 23%. I don't know how accurate the machine is, but I'm just gonna go by it. So I haven't made any progress. Again, I think the harder I work out at the gym, the more I eat. And maybe I'm eating too much. Although I feel really good, I feel like I have a lot more energy. I'm putting more and more weight on the squats. And I have a lot more energy at work. And I have a lot more energy to run around and play with my daughters. So I think I'm still on the right track, but I still want to get down to that 18% body fat. Yeah, thanks for all the support from everyone that watches my videos. That video I did last week got a lot of positive feedback. I'm glad people enjoyed that. I think I did miss out a few channels and I messed up a few times, but that was a lot of work and I don't want to redo it. Yeah, I'm having a lot of fun making all of these videos and meeting new people on the internet. But I can't get distracted from my goal. My goal is to lose body fat percentage and get more healthy. And I think this has been helping and everyone's been very motivating to me. So I'm not really trying to grow this channel right now. I do appreciate all of the subscriptions and I appreciate that people take time out of their day to watch this. Even if you just click through it and watch it for a few minutes. Yeah, but I can't get caught up with doing this too much because I don't have a lot of free time. I enjoy it though. Oh, speaking of having fun, I finally beat Final Fantasy 12 over here. I think after like 105 hours I beat it. I think maybe I did a little bit too much grinding, but I wanted to make sure I was overpowered for the final boss because I didn't want to get stuck. Yeah, I was playing this for the Summer Backlog Challenge put on by DatGameCollector, Alex. And I never even got through one game because this game took so long. But I'm glad I played this. I had a lot of fun with this. I'd like to do a review on it, but I don't really do reviews, and that would take up another 5 hours at least of my time. Let me just say, Final Fantasy 12 though, if you've never played a Final Fantasy game and you're kind of iffy about it, like I was, I would start with this one. You don't have to worry about any of that random encounter stuff. You don't have to worry about taking turns. It's all pretty much straightforward. The game actually plays itself if you set it up right. Yeah, it has a really confusing but epic story. The graphics are really good for back then, and I can't believe they fit all of this onto one DVD. The only thing that messed me up about this game was that the camera control was inverted. So you press right, you look left, you press up, you look down. And it took me a long time to get used to that, but then after a while it was just normal to me. And that really messed me up because then when I went to go play Breath of the Wild, I could not play Breath of the Wild. I tried to play Skyrim, I couldn't play it because I was so accustomed to that stupid inverted camera control. So I'm playing at Skyrim right now for the Fall Backlog Challenge, and hopefully I get my mind stuck back to the old way I play games. This game wouldn't let you turn off the inverted camera angles controls, so I think I would like to play this game again, but if I ever do, I'll play it on the PS4. Hopefully that new remake of it has controller options, so I don't have to do that inverted camera anymore. That really messed me up. It really hurt me inside that I went to go play Breath of the Wild and I couldn't aim and I couldn't move around. Yeah, so Skyrim I'm working on right now for the Fall Backlog Challenge, and I'm not liking it at all. I really loved Oblivion. Oblivion's one of my favorite games of all time. I just have never liked Skyrim, and I'm just trying to power through it right now. I just find it really dull and boring. I know it's regarded as one of the best games of the last generation, but man, I don't like the map. I don't like the inventory. I don't like the skill trees and all that. but maybe by the time I beat it, I'll like it. I'm figuring I'm about halfway through the story right now. And then I beat Star Fox for the Fall Backlog challenge, put on by DatGameCollector, Alex. Yeah, so I beat Star Fox the other day, and that was a fun game. I had a lot of fun with Star Fox. It was really easy, but I enjoyed it. It was an adrenaline rush too. Yeah, it just amazed me that something like that could be on Super Nintendo back then. And all the low frame rate and all that didn't really bother me any. That's not the type of thing that's ever bothered me. Yeah, so Star Fox down, working on Skyrim, and then I'm hoping around Halloween I'm going to start on Evil Within. And then I'll finish it off with GoldenEye Reloaded. Oh, and then one of these Saturdays I think I'm going to be playing with Cyberneticslayer on Resident Evil 5. He's running through all of the Resident Evil games this month on live streams. And I said I'd help him out with Resident Evil 5 because I love that game. And I have all my guns and everything maxed out on that game, so I figured we could just tear through that game really fast for his live stream. So that may be next Saturday. I might not do a video next Saturday, and I might be playing Resident Evil 5 instead. Unless it conflicts with his schedule. I know he's busy, so we might end up doing that another Saturday. Alright, this week I'm going to share some recommendations for horror games and horror movies to play around Halloween time. So 5 movies, 5 games, 5 recommendations of each. Okay, first off is a pretty obvious one. I recommend Resident Evil Remake on GameCube. It's available for PS3, PS4, Xbox 360, Xbox One now. The remake of the remake. This is the original one. I think it's aged really well. I think if you have a GameCube and not the newer systems, you'll get the same experience out of this. At the time I played this, I didn't think any game would ever look any better than this. Like I said, it still holds up. The atmosphere is so creepy. I had already played through the original game many times before I played this, but this was a whole new ball game. It's set up the same way, but it's just so much scarier. Some parts of this game I don't even want to go through certain doors because I'm afraid what's behind it. Yeah, just all of the lighting and the character models and the creatures, it's so creepy. A lot of the camera angles in here are really creepy too. These fixed camera angles work really well for games like this. Yeah, and like I said, it's the original game, but up the graphics. The voice acting is improved, although I do like the corny old voice acting from the original game. And then they added a few new areas in this, and that made it even more scary because I didn't know what to expect. I kind of felt comfortable in the areas from the original game, but then there are some new areas, and I really felt anxiety in those spots. Okay, and here's a movie I recommend to watch this Halloween. Nightmare City, directed by Umberto Lenzi. He did a lot of these weird Italian movies back then, all these gory Italian movies. Nightmare City is also known as City of the Walking Dead. It's a zombie apocalypse movie. Came out a little bit after Dawn of the Dead. I think this is 1980 or 1981. Just some people get contaminated with radioactivity or whatever, and then they turn into these homicidal zombie. They're not the typical slow shuffling undead zombies. These guys are kind of more like 28 Days Later. I think 28 Days Later was probably inspired by this. I know Quentin Tarantino liked this movie and it inspired him. Yeah, these zombies in here can run, they can shoot guns, they can even drive cars. So it's really chaotic, but it's a really good zombie apocalypse movie. Evil Dead Regeneration for Xbox. I think it was also on PlayStation 2. This is a really fun action game, horror themed. It's got the Evil Dead vibe going down. It feels a lot like Army of Darkness or Evil Dead 2. It even has Bruce Campbell in here playing Ash, or he does the voice. There are pretty good action games and puzzles in there. I wouldn't really call it a survival horror. It's more of a hack and slash, but horror themed. This was a budget title back then, but it doesn't really show. It's a pretty quality game. Kind of more of a fun Halloween-y type game to play. Okay, and Chuck Norris here in Silent Rage. And it's directed by Michael Miller. I'm not really familiar with anything else he does, but I've always liked this movie. This movie scared me when I was a kid. My folks wouldn't let me watch like Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street, but they let me watch this for some reason. And I think this is actually scarier to me. It's a Chuck Norris action movie when you come down to it, but I find this movie really scary. It's about this psychotic dude, and he's a big dude, and he's a mute. He doesn't talk, and he has to take meds to keep him from going crazy, I guess, but he runs out of his meds, and he just goes on a killing spree at the beginning of the movie, and it's really disturbing. And then Chuck Norris is the sheriff, and he comes and saves the day, and he beats this guy down. I think they end up killing him, this psychotic killer. And then the same town happens to have these genetic engineers that are working with regeneration on human cells or whatever. So somehow they get a hold of this guy's body and they experiment on him. The experiment is a success and all of his wounds heal. So this guy can get cut, his wounds will heal, he can get shot, his wounds will heal. And then he breaks out of the lab and goes on a killing spree. And I find it really scary. This movie kind of feels like The Terminator, but it came out a couple years before The Terminator. But I thought this this villain in here, the monster, if you will, the bad guy, it was really scary. He was just this big, mute dude that never said anything. He just murdered and stalked people. And then Chuck Norris would always beat him up and beat him down, but he'd always get back up and keep coming after him. He'd blow him up, catch him on fire. He'd just keep coming after Chuck Norris. There are some parts in this movie that are really scary, though. This is probably my favorite Chuck Norris movie. Here's another obvious one to play during Halloween time. Silent Hill 2. Probably already know about this game. It's probably one of my favorite horror games. I'm not going to go on and on about this. I think I've talked about it before. Oh, and here's another one. Beautiful Prison. This movie is directed by Joel Valley, my favorite YouTube guy. This is a psychological horror movie. I don't really want to say much about it because I'll give it away. I really recommend anyone watch this movie. Let me just say, if you like horror movies, this covers a lot of little subgenres within horror. Like, you'll see zombies in here, a lot of gore, and it's a really good movie. All the actors in here pull off everything well. Another thing that makes it really good are the characters are really relatable. And if you get the DVD of this, there's a really, really good documentary with Joel Valley on the making of this movie. And he makes it a lot of fun. Yeah, I don't know what the budget was for this, but it's really well made. It looks really good. Yeah, I don't want to say anything about it. I'll give away the movie. It has a lot of twists and turns in there. You got to experience this movie once in your life. Beautiful Prison. I think you have to order this one online, or it might be on the PlayStation movie deal, or it might be on some downloadable services or streaming services. I'm not sure, but I would get the DVD of this. Oh, and here is a movie I really like, Dagon, directed by Stuart Gordon. It's based on a lot of H.P. Lovecraft stories. Mostly it's based on Shadow over Innsmouth, the H.P. Lovecraft short story. This movie is a trip. Yeah, this movie is really gory. I feel bad I made my wife watch this once and it made her upset. It's about a couple of rich couples that are out on a yacht on the Mediterranean, and they run into some coral reef or something, and their boat gets stuck, and then they end up on this island in Spain, and that's where it gets really weird. What I really like about this movie is I think Resident Evil 4 was heavily inspired by it. Go watch this movie and tell me what you think. Do you think Resident Evil 4 was inspired by this? There's a village in Spain full of these maniacs that are almost like zombie people. They just remind me of the villagers in Resident Evil 4, and the whole scenery in this movie reminds me a lot of Resident Evil 4. There are even a couple of them that look like the merchants from Resident Evil 4. And then there's a lot of like underground tunnels. Like there's an underground tunnel from the village to the church, just like in Resident Evil. I think that came a lot from H.P. Lovecraft works. I think Resident Evil 4 was inspired a lot by H.P. Lovecraft stuff. Yeah, but Shinji Mikami, the director of Resident Evil, he had to have seen this movie, or any of the developers had to have seen this movie. Yeah, check out Dagon though. This movie is really creepy, really gory, really unsettling movie. I like the music in here too. Alright, and that movie kind of transitions well into this game for Xbox, Call of Cthulhu. This is based on a lot of the same stuff from H.P. Lovecraft. This is a video game. A lot of stuff you see in Dagon is in this game. A lot of crazy villagers chasing you, a lot of sneaking around. This is like a survival horror game. First person, this is a first person survival horror shooter action game. Really unsettling. It's based on a lot of short stories by H.P. Lovecraft. Yeah, I think I've talked about this one before. I really recommend this game to play at Halloween time. Call of Cthulhu, Dark Corners of the Earth. Okay, and then this movie here, Just Before Dawn, directed by Jeff Lieberman. I'm not really familiar with him other than that he directed the movie Squirm, and I've always liked that movie too. That's a pretty good horror movie. This movie, Just Before Dawn, is about a bunch of kids camping in the wilderness, and they get terrorized by these weird inbred looking scary mountain men. It kind of reminds me along the lines of The Hills Have Eyes or Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I saw this movie as a kid on television, and it was really disturbing to me, and I never knew what the name of it was. It wasn't up until about the year 2000 I figured out what it was. Maybe 2005. Looking on Internet Movie Database, I researched. Finally I found the movie Just Before Dawn. Really scary, kind of slasher type movie. If you like Friday the 13th, stuff like that, if you like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Hills Have Eyes, you'll like this. I find this movie really eerie, really unsettling. It doesn't really have a soundtrack, but there's like this ambient whistling going on in the background all the time. It's really eerie. I think I've talked about this one before. I recommend this one, Just Before Dawn. Okay, and then Cold Fear here for Xbox. It's also available on PlayStation 2. And I haven't heard much about this game lately. I think this would be a good one to have a re-release. This is a fun survival horror game to play at Halloween time. This is really heavily inspired by Resident Evil. It's a lot like Resident Evil 4. It's obvious they were trying to rip off Resident Evil 4 in this game. The guy in here looks like Leon, and it's over the shoulder when you aim with a laser sight. The pacing of it is more like an old school Resident Evil though, so I think there are a lot of people out there that got turned off by Resident Evil 4 and all the action. I'm not one of them. Resident Evil 4 is my favorite game of all time. But I think if you're more into the older Resident Evil games, this one's for you. It has some fixed camera angles. It has some third-person camera angles. Sometimes it's over the shoulder. And it takes place on a Russian whaler. It's a big ship full of zombies. So it's like the Resident Evil formula. You gotta search this ship. It's full of zombies, full of creatures. You gotta find keys to unlock doors and whatever. And he always says stuff like when you come to a door that's locked and you can't get in, the little guy here says stuff like, "Great, it's locked!" Or, "This door ain't opening." So it has some of the Resident Evil style, like voice acting, and I like stuff like that. Yeah, this is just a really solid game. I don't know how well it was received back then, but I really love this. It kind of took me away from Resident Evil 4 briefly. A lot of games couldn't do that back then. So Cold Fear, check it out. Okay, that's about it for this week. Thanks for stopping by. I'll see you next week with my diet update. Bye!